The most common cause of death after 60 script my grandmother was 73 when she died. Not from cancer. Not from heart disease. Not from any of the things you'd expect to take someone her age. Kids fall off bikes, adults trip on sidewalks, athletes fall all the time. But here's what nobody talks about, what nobody prepares you for. Falls are the leading cause of injury for adults ages 65 years and older. Over 14 million, or 1 in 4 older adults, report falling every year. We talked about her garden, about the new recipe she wanted to try, about my kids starting school. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. When you're over 60, a fall isn't just a fall anymore. That's not a gradual increase. That's an epidemic that nobody's talking about. The kind of trauma that happens in milliseconds but changes everything forever. Your bones are more fragile. Your balance isn't what it used to be. Your body doesn't recover the way it did when you were younger. What would be a bruise at 30 becomes a fracture at 70. What would be a minor injury at 40 becomes life-threatening at 80. She was healthy for her age, walked every day, still drove herself to the grocery store. In my mind, she was invincible. In 2021, falls caused 38,000 deaths among those aged 65 plus, and emergency departments reported 3 million visits due to older adult falls. My dad, who's 68 and still thinks he's 30. My mom, who's 65 and refuses to admit she needs glasses. Were they at risk too? Were there signs I was missing? 3 million emergency visits. That's someone's mother, father, grandmother, grandfather going to the hospital because they fell. She mentioned feeling a little unsteady sometimes. Just part of getting old, she said with a laugh. I laughed too. We both laughed. The floor that had never seemed slippery before. The vanity that had never seemed dangerously positioned. Everything looked the same. But I saw it differently now. If only we'd known that feeling unsteady was her body's way of warning us. That she was ready to go. That it was her time. But I knew better. In 2023, 41,400 older adults died from preventable falls. Preventable. Her death was preventable. They happened to active, healthy people over 60. They happen to people who exercise regularly. They happen to people who are careful. They happen because aging changes your body in ways you don't realize until it's too late. Dad, when's the last time you fell? I asked. There was a pause. Why are you asking? He said. Just curious. Removing throw rugs. Installing handrails on the stairs. My dad complained that I was making him feel old. I'd rather you feel old than have you join the statistics, I told him. The smooth tile floor that could be slippery when wet. The sharp corners at head height. The step up into the shower. All the hazards that had been invisible until they weren't. Another pause. Well, I slipped on some ice last winter. And I tripped over the garden hose a few weeks ago. Nothing serious. But what I discovered after losing my grandmother shattered everything I thought I knew about aging and mortality. The most common cause of death after 60 isn't what you think it is. How someone so vital, so independent, could be taken by something so simple. What I found terrified me. Adults older than 60 years of age suffer the greatest number of fatal falls. The bathroom without grab bars. The dim lighting in the hallway. Your vision gets a little worse. Your balance becomes slightly off. Your reflexes slow down just enough. Your bones become more brittle. It's not dramatic. It's subtle. Until it isn't. The slight step between the kitchen and living room that she'd navigated thousands of times. All the little things that seemed harmless but were actually dangers waiting to happen. But it's not just the deaths. It's the injuries. The broken hips. The traumatic brain injuries. The spiral of decline that follows. She died from a fall. A simple fall in her own bathroom that changed everything in less than 3 seconds. I never thought a fall could kill someone. I mean, we all fall, right? Everyone assumes it's heart disease. That's what killed my grandfather, after all. Or maybe cancer. That's what took my neighbor last year. Let me put this in perspective for you. In 2021, 38,742 older adults died as the result of unintentional falls. That's more than 100 people every single day. More than 100 families getting that phone call. More than 100 lives lost to something we never see coming. But here's the part that haunts me. In 2023, 41,400 older adults died from preventable falls. Preventable. That word keeps echoing in my head. My grandmother's death was preventable. And maybe if I'd known what I know now, she'd still be here. The morning it happened, my grandmother had called me like she did every Tuesday. That afternoon, she didn't answer when I called to check on her. By evening, I was worried enough to drive over. I found her unconscious in her bathroom. She'd fallen getting out of the shower. Hit her head on the corner of the vanity. The paramedic said she'd been there for hours. At the hospital, the doctor explained what I never knew. From 2003 to 2023, death rates from falls rose more than 70% for adults ages 65 to 74. 70%. My grandmother never woke up. 3 days later, we had to make the decision to let her go. Brain trauma from the fall. I started researching after the funeral. I needed to understand how this could happen. The statistics are staggering. Each year, an estimated 684,000 individuals die from falls globally, of which over 80% are in low and middle-income countries. I thought about my grandmother's house. The throw rugs she loved. Here's what nobody tells you about aging. Your body betrays you gradually. I remember visiting my grandmother a few months before she died. The most heartbreaking part? Falls are the leading cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries among older adults. I started thinking about my own parents. I called my dad the next week. My heart sank. Nothing serious. That's what my grandmother would have said too. Here's what I learned. Falls don't just happen to frail elderly people. The bathroom where my grandmother fell. I walked through it after the funeral. The shower she'd used safely for 20 years. I saw the lack of grab bars. The funeral was the hardest part. People kept saying she lived a good life. I started making changes at my parents' house the next month. Grab bars in the bathroom. Non-slip mats in the shower. Better lighting in the hallways. Because here's the thing about falls after 60. They are not just accidents. They're predictable. They're preventable. And they are happening to people we love every single day. The percentage of women who reported falling 28.9% was higher than that among men, 26.1%. 1 in 4 older adults falls every year. 1 in 4. That means if you have 4 people in your family over 60, statistically, one of them will fall this year. The hardest part about losing my grandmother wasn't the grief. It was the regret. The knowing that if I'd understood the risks, if I'd paid attention to the warning signs, if I'd made some simple changes to her home, she might still be here. I think about her every time I see an older person walking carefully down the street. Every time I visit someone's home and notice the hazards. Every time I hear someone say, "I'm just getting old," when they mention feeling unsteady. Falls after 60 aren't just part of aging. They are not inevitable. They are not just one of those things. They are a leading cause of death that we can prevent. But only if we stop pretending they are not a real threat. My grandmother taught me to bake. She taught me to garden. She taught me to love unconditionally. But the most important lesson she taught me was one she never meant to teach. She taught me that the biggest threats to our loved ones aren't always the ones we see coming. The most common cause of death after 60 isn't what you think it is. It's not always the dramatic heart attack or the long battle with cancer. Sometimes it's 3 seconds in a bathroom. Sometimes it's a simple fall that changes everything. And sometimes, if we are paying attention, if we are prepared, if we are willing to have the hard conversations and make the necessary changes, it's something we can prevent. I couldn't save my grandmother. But maybe, just maybe, I can save someone else's.